Alright, now I've got another NPC upgrade build for you today, and today we're looking at V.III Oakheep's Barren Flower AC. And the Barren Flower is actually going to be the first AC I've worked on since the new patch. Also the first AC with some of the new parts. Now, what are the main issues with his build? Honestly, the main thing is just like he's playing an archetype that's not very well favored in this game, and that being sort of like the mid-range spammer, right? And unfortunately, mid-range spam builds just don't do that well in Armored Core 6. So I've kind of taken advantage of the new parts to slightly switch up his playstyle while maintaining his identity as a mid-range spammer, but now it's kind of like you spam for mid-range until you're ready to move in closer, to engage at a closer distance, and get that stagger and get a bunch of burst damage, right? So it's kind of still a mid-range spam build, but now you can actually are fast enough to quickly move in and take advantage of an opening, right? And that's of course going to be thanks to the new Lammer Gyre legs. With it, the hover speed of this thing exceeds 390, which is just crazy, by the way. The Lammer Gyre tetrapod legs are so fast. I love these things. I love them a lot. Now, as for the weapons, I actually haven't made too many changes here. Made a few tweaks here and there. Mainly, the big thing here is going to be the container missile. I spent some time messing with it, but in the end, I just couldn't feel like it was really all that good, right? For what it does, it's actually not that bad, but I feel like the active homing missile fills the exact same role as the container missile, but does the job better, right? So that's what I've switched it out for. Unfortunately, they're kind of just a bit too heavy and drain too much energy for the build to have the double cell one, so we've only got the single cells, but even it, just having the active homing missile constantly tracking your opponent can be an absolute nightmare to deal with. And it does feel like a pretty significant upgrade to me at least. But overall, the small tweaks and the ability to really get in close and aggress on your opponent has made the build feel much better to me, and I'm quite fond of this build now. Now, that's enough talking about it. Let's get into the details. Now, getting into the weapon loadout, Oakheep's weapons haven't seen many changes. Oh, just one, but as always, let's go over all of the weapons. Now, first, we've got the Rensetsu RF. You guys are all familiar with this weapon by now, I'm sure. In terms of assault rifles, it's probably still the best in the game. And, you know, it's got good impact, it's got good damage, especially during direct hits. It does have a good direct hit adjustment, 220. Nothing to complain about there. But it just is a fantastic stagger generator and maintainer, right? Now, I actually did consider giving him the new heavy machine gun, and the main reason I ended up opting against this was just that this build is already really running short on energy supply. Our supply efficiency is only 2400. Which already doesn't feel that great, so adding anything that took any extra energy to the build felt really bad, right? And moving on, we've got the plasma rifle, the 760 PR, which did just recently get buffed, and that is a large factor in why I decided to keep this, and supply efficiency was another one. But this got like a projectile speed buff, and the standard uncharged attacks on this are actually pretty nice now. They do pretty good amount of damage, especially with our really high energy, you know, efficiency generator. So this weapon does pretty solid damage on the uncharged attacks, on direct hits as well. This is a pretty solid weapon now, in my opinion. The charged attacks are still not great, unfortunately, but it's just like a uncharged attack spam weapon. This weapon's pretty solid now, and can probably kind of replace these LRA in that role. Might be just a better option overall now. Now, moving on, we've got the only change I made. We've got the active homing missile. Originally, it has on the container missile launcher, and these two weapons fill a very similar role of basically just harassing your opponent, right? And I do feel like this just generally does a better job of it. I tried this weapon out quite a bit, and in the end, I just couldn't find myself liking it, right? And it is what it is. It's quite heavy, too. So, switching this did save a lot of weight. And the active homing missiles are just really nasty, right? Once they lock onto you, it can be really hard to get away from. And I do like these things quite a lot. I feel like I've been using them more and more recently, and it's just because they're just that good, right? Now, moving on, the final weapon, the VPM. Now, this weapon did just get nerfed, but it's still pretty good. It got a guidance nerf, and it got a like a lock-on distance. You know, there's basically a minimum distance that it'll track from, right? And it got longer, right? I think it went from like 18 meters was like the closest it could track to like 32 or something like that. But the VPMs are still quite solid, so I definitely saw absolutely no reason to change this at all, right? And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say about the weapons. Let's move on into the frame. Now, for the frame parts, we've actually got quite a lot of changes, and it just so happens that the new frame parts are actually quite nice for this build, because this is a build that really wants to maintain, a certain distance from the opponent and really be able to control the distance, right? Now, of course, first we've got the head, the Mind Alpha head. This is what he had on originally, and this is a decent enough head. It's got good attitude ability, it's got good defenses, and it's not super heavy, and it's pretty low on energy load, which this build really needs, right? Obviously, kind of the main consideration here for a switch would be Mind Beta. Less armor, but better attitude stability and better energy load, right? But this build is already on the squishy side, and I really didn't want to sacrifice any more survivability, and I didn't feel like the extra attitude stability was really worth it, considering like how low on defenses the build already is, right? Especially since we've got the new Lammergeier core, which is even squishier than the Nocturne core in some ways, right? But obviously the big thing here is just much better generator stats, and this lets us use a generator with a higher damage output to really make that plasma rifle pop off, right? And that's why I went with it, and partially just because I wanted to use new frame parts in the build, right? Now next we've got the VP46S. This is switched from his original VP46A. Unfortunately, the build just simply can't sustain such a heavy set of arms at the moment. And these are still pretty chunky. They've got decent defenses still. Like, these are still pretty solid arms all around. But they just don't have the defenses this arm. But they also have better firearm specialization, which is quite nice for this build, right? Now, finally, we've got the new Lammergeier legs, switched from the original VP424 legs, right? And the main thing here is just speed, right? Speed. Even with the current loadout of, some pretty hefty weapons, this thing hovers at 390 something, right? I don't remember exactly what it is, but this thing hovers fast. It's a really fast pair of legs just in general, right? And this is really nice. It allows you to really maintain that distance control that this build really likes. And yeah, this has just made the build feel so much better, in my opinion. And yeah, that's about all there is to say about the frame parts. Let's move on into the internals. Now, getting the internals, first, of course, we've got the boosters. I've actually switched his original Flugel boosters out for the P04s. And the main thing here is just that these boosters have really good quick boost stats. For a tetrapod, right? Good energy consumption, decent jet duration, and decent reload weight, along with an ideal reload weight that can carry this entire build easily. And, the main thing here is that your hover doesn't care about your thrust stats at all, right? It doesn't matter what your boosters are. Your hover is going to be 390 plus as long as you're not overweight on this build, not overburdened on this build, right? So none of that stuff matters. Things that do matter, things like energy consumption, reload weight, stuff like that. And, it's also got good assault boost stats, pretty fast assault boost with good energy consumption, right? So this is a really nice booster for this build. And honestly, the P04 is probably the overall best booster for the Lammergeier legs, in my opinion. It's certainly the one I like the most. I've tried out a bunch of different boosters on these legs, and I love the P04s on these legs, right? So I went with the P04s here. Now, next for the SCS, we've got the P05. Main thing here is just really high medium range assist, because this is where this build is going to be mostly playing at, except for when you move in to really sort of try to collapse on an opponent and get that stagger, get that big burst damage, right? It's got decent missile lock correction, which is just enough to keep the VPMs from having like a super long you're not going to have a long lock on time on the VPMs no matter what, right? So it doesn't actually matter that much, but it is nice to at least have like 100 missile lock correction, right? The big thing here is, the arms don't have super high firearm specialization, so having that good medium range assist is really nice, and the close range assist isn't terrible as well, right? Now, for the generator, we've got the VE20B, the 150 energy firearm spec generator. And I really wanted to go for this to make that plasma rifle just pop off, right? And with it, it does a lot of damage. Even the uncharged shots slap quite hard, and you can do quite a lot of damage in a pretty short amount of time with this thing, just because of how much damage each shot does with this generator. Now, obviously, the main thing here is that the VE20C is kind of just too heavy for this build in a lot of ways. So couldn't really fit this without making some other sacrifices, like having really squishy arms or something like that. But in a way, you could consider this better because it's got better energy capacity is kind of going to be the main thing. But the P04s definitely make up for the relatively small energy capacity of this in a large way, right? And it's another reason why I really love the P04s on this build. And yeah, finally, of course, originally he's got on pulse armor. Nothing to really change about there. And yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for the build. As always, hope you guys enjoyed the video. And before we get into the gameplay footage, quick thank you to our members. As always, any tier of the membership is greatly appreciated. Your support helps a lot. As always, use your name here. Do the purple cat tier or higher, you get to see videos a day early, and there's other stuff as well. Now, let's get into the gameplay footage.
Let's get started with Raven. Astrocrown's pilot, callsign King, has an 89.6% mission success rate. His reputation for finesse is such that he's advertised as the ideal mercenary. Umbrox is piloted by Chartreuse, an aggressive bulldozer with unrivaled firepower. Those who've seen her at work call her an unstoppable force. Intercept the two targets.
There's our merc. Go take care of the objective, King. I'll clip this one's wings.
Not alone. This is a branch mission. I'll support you.
You don't know when to quit. Just like all the other Ravens.
This pilot's no Raven. Don't let the call sign mislead you.
What other Ravens?
This isn't right. You're just a Gen 4. You belong in a museum, no. I hope you die.
Chartreuse! Withdraw! Abandon your AC!
AC Umbrox destroyed. Wait, I'm picking up another AC.
Augmented human C4621. We're not here to take back the Raven name. However, we will see if you can do it justice. Apologies for the delay, King.
You're late. Imposter. You're strong. Worthy of your name.
AC Astrocrown destroyed.
Thank you, King. We've lost both of them.
One AC left, Raven.
A Raven is a symbol of resolve. The will to choose what one fights for.
Stay focused, Raven.
No repair kits remaining.
Yes, Raven, I feel it too. This mercenary has potential.
Where to choose?
Raven, we can still... All right. We'll watch this one. See where they go on a Raven's wings.
All enemy ACs destroyed. Mission accomplished.